There we go. Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a special episode of Essence today. Essence podcast is a podcast all about story, journey, and self. And this one is definitely about story. I'd like you to meet Ryan and Rob, my co-facilitators and co-conspirators for the ARTistory retreat that is coming up in October 20th to 24th, 2021. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So this special episode was put together to kind of introduce the idea of the retreat, to introduce ourselves to anybody who is interested in meeting us beforehand, and to kind of talk a little bit about the story of the retreat around story. So ARTistory, it's been something that I've been part of for 6 months now, but I understand that you both have been working on this for almost 2 years now. First of all, do you want to introduce yourselves and say a little bit about who you are and what you do? And then we can talk about kind of the story behind this.
Sure. Do you want to go, Ryan?
Certainly. Well, my name's Ryan. I'm actually one of the owners of the venue where this is taking place up north at Foxhaven. And when I'm not working on all kinds of events in the property, I'm a musician. I love playing the piano for different events and things. I am a model for artists, and creating of art is one of my favorite things to do. I just love being a part of the creative process, either behind the easel or the subject of it. I also am a performer on stage. And so art is something that has always been a part of my life and something that I've adored. And it's just something that I think is so essential to life and to healing and to how one interacts with everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm Rob. I am a writer and a teacher. I teach acting in animation. Have my little muse co-hosts here. And I teach writing at a few colleges around the GTA. And I've just always believed in the power of story, both even before I got into the therapeutic process. We are storytellers. Mm-hmm. Wherever your ancestors came from, they spent their evenings sitting around campfires, telling stories. It defined them as people and as a culture and as an entity. Mm-hmm. And that's just always been a really powerful part of my life. So this kind of came out of that.
Wonderful, wonderful. For those who are watching this, not on my own social media, but on other platforms and the ARTistory website. So my name is Ben Stimson. I'm a counselor in Southern Ontario here. And story is really something that I resonate with in both a professional and spiritual level. As Rob was saying, there's this beautiful connection piece between story and therapeutic process, but also entertainment, cultural. People would stand and sit around the fire on cold winter nights telling stories, and it's such an essential part of our kind of human experience. And so that's really something that I'm looking forward to joining in with this event. So as I said before, I became involved through rather spooky coincidences, really, about 6 months ago. We can get into that in a few moments, but I understand it's been kind of in the process for you both for 2 years. What kind of started the process off?
It started with a pair of socks, actually. Ryan and I have been friends for a while, and I've been to Foxhaven, love the place. I love the energy around there. I'd been to events at Foxhaven, which is a retreat center. And we were meeting for lunch for really no particular purpose except to see each other. And I yanked out a pair of socks that I was knitting. And we started talking about the creative process and what creativity does in our lives, from something as utilitarian as a pair of socks to masterpieces. And out of that came the idea for a retreat based on art, that art is an amazing way to tap into our inner resources and to express ourselves, and everything we create becomes a metaphor on some level for who we are in our journey. So that turned into a retreat in the summer of 2020. 2020, which of course didn't happen because of COVID. I was excited about it. My thought, and Ryan and I had discussed this, that it felt awesome, but unfocused.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was more just to help people to connect with their creative side. It was about all kinds of arts and crafts. And for anyone that was a professional artist or someone who was a hobbyist or someone who had never connected with the creative side, is giving opportunities to all of that. So it was going to be exciting and fun and a whirlwind of different crafts and arts and things. But then, of course, the world shut down in 2020. So that never came to be. And so we had that on the back burner for a while. And then I believe, Rob, you and I both share a therapist, and I'm not together, of course, separately. It just how happens. And so you were talking to her, I believe, right?
Yeah. And I had been finding the power of connecting with my own story and the narrative I have been telling myself for decades, and the power, sometimes destructively, of this narrative I tell myself about my own story. And I asked her, I felt this incredible need to just do something with that, to take that out of myself. I am by nature not just a writer, I'm also a teacher. And I asked her about studying to be a therapist, and she was wonderfully supportive, and after a few minutes of chat suggested that rather than starting from square one as a therapist, which she said she would totally support and help me out with, to take the skills I've spent decades developing as a writer and a teacher of story and somehow work that in. And my first concept, I love that. I love that idea. She knew that Ryan and I knew each other. She said, you have access to this retreat center. Why not talk to Ryan about that? Right. We realized that as exciting as that was, we needed a third entity. We needed someone with that strong, amazing background in therapeutic studies and therapeutic practice. And she brought in Ben. So the fourth member of our trio is Kathy.
Yes, very much Kathy. She connected us, and she's an amazing person.
She really is. I was able to do some training with her, a couple of classes together, and just knowing her outside of that, she's a very gifted therapist and wonderful person. And it's funny because kind of story was so integral to the reason that I came in. And I hope you don't mind, Rob. I'm going to share the story because it's so
Please
fantastic.
Do.
So
I think you're going to sell. Please do.
Well, I received an email from my supervisor who had been approached. And she said, there's this opportunity, and Kathy would like to connect. So I connected with Kathy, and we started putting a meeting together. And this was around New Year's time, I think it was. And in other areas of my life, I've been working with my supervisor on kind of visioning my practice and kind of where my own therapy practice was heading. And she said, I feel like you need to do a ritual or something to ritualize, this hope that you have for your process. I feel like, because story is such a big part of your kind of focus right now, create some kind of ritual, like, I don't know, like Jack and the Beanstalk, like, take magic beans and throw them out the window to symbolize your beanstalk of your practice growing. And so I did. And then 3 days later, I get this email from Kathy stating, I've got these two guys who are really interested in putting together a retreat, and would you be interested? We're like, yeah, I'd be interested. So I met with Kathy about a week later just to chit chat, like we haven't seen each other for a year or so. And I said, so these guys, what who are they, and kind of what do they do, and that. And Kathy said, well, Rob is a professional playwright, and he's currently working on a play on Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yes.
Like I live this world, and it still boggles my mind that some stuff like that happened. So that for me was a clear sign. Okay, yes, this is a clear sign for me. And so then I became involved. And it's been a wonderful 6 months of creating and envisioning and building our connections. And I'm really, really looking forward to putting this out there. I'd like to ask a little bit about Foxhaven, because Foxhaven is kind of the fifth entity in this adventure that we're on. Ryan, you're a proprietor, owner of Foxhaven. Can you tell us a little bit about the retreat center and kind of how that started?
Absolutely. Well, Foxhaven is a beautiful place. It's right up north of Toronto, 4 hours, and it's 130 acres. It backs onto Crown land, and it has its own lake. Like, the property surrounds the lake, so there's no other access to it, and it has its own an island on the lake, and it's on the Canadian Shield with birch and maple and all kinds of evergreen forests with animals like moose, and there's beavers that constantly swim by, and groundhog. Actually, there's one that's right now cruising the kale in the garden, but that would be Hutchins. You'll probably meet him if the coyotes don't get him eventually. And it's just a beautiful place. The driveway is 1.5 kilometers long. So when you're back here, it's completely private. There's no access from outsiders, which makes it a very unusual place in that you have water, you have a lake, and no motorboats going by, no access from other neighbors, and so it's a perfect place, a safe place to be able to create your own world for however long the event lasts. So I'd originally rented it before with a number of friends as a kids camp for adults, a fun place, and it was fun, and there was a couple people that came to it that were trans but not out, and this was the first time they ever felt comfortable dressing as themselves, as their true selves. And so the idea came that it could be a safe place, a place that would be for alternative communities, for retreats, for people to be able to express themselves, get to know themselves better, and connect with others of like liberal minds. And so when the person that owned it before approached me and said, what you've created here, what you're doing with this event, this is wonderful. Unfortunately, because of health and financial and just my life, they are in their 70s. I can't do it, but I'd love to figure out a way to sell it to you, Ryan. And I thought, well, I'd love that too, but I'm kind of a starving artist kind of a person, putting on events and doing drag and different things and modeling for artists, it doesn't exactly pay the bills to be able to buy a place. So I found two other people that were very close friends of mine. One is living in Montreal, the other one is in Seattle, and they are just fantastic people. And so the three of us were able to purchase the property together and have started to transform it into its potential, what it could be. We've made all kinds of paths, put up 50 campsites. Many of the campsites were there before, but we've worked on improving it and turning the garage, which was a very, very sad, scary, awful building, into an activity center. In other words, getting out all the sad things that had happened in there and made it into now what I call the glitter palace, because glitter just makes everything. It's one of my favorite decorating elements. Literally, the door I'm right now painting that's drying is purple and pink glitter sparkles. So it's whimsy, it's fun. It's the idea that you come here and you cross the threshold, the gate and you suddenly are in a place where you can be yourself, that's set apart from the rest of the world. And so we're having pride events up here. I'm right now working with a trans group. And so it's working with retreats like this one, working with some fetish communities, and a place where people can come, and for that week or weekend or 5 days, they can set up and be perfectly comfortable with an aspect of themselves or as their true selves, and able to just relax or have fun or laugh, or just they can leave the rest of the world's stresses at the gate and choose which ones they pick up when they cross back there again afterwards. So that's kind of in a nutshell of what this place is and how it came to be.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what I love about what you just explained, and that was a beautiful explanation.
Thanks.
Is that it's all about people finding their true selves. It's about offering a place, a safe place that people can explore themselves. And that's really what ARTistory is all about, kind of the beautiful retreat that we've put together. And that connects very much with Rob's work. Rob, if you don't mind me asking a little bit about that in your professional work, and your personal work as well. You do a lot of that through the medium of writing and through performance. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the process of kind of finding oneself in story and narrative?
One of the things that all of my students have heard me say probably far too many times is that the purpose of any art is to get honest. When we are truly honest with the work that we are creating, two really cool things happen. One is that we discover that we are all the same. We feel the same emotions, we connect in the same ways, which is why we can, look at cave paintings in southern France and connect to those people from the dawn of European civilization. We can, hear indigenous stories that have been passed down for centuries and connect with them because we are all the same. And the other thing that happens when we get really honest is we find that we are absolutely, utterly individual, that no one can express those that inner humanity the way you can. No one in the history of the world has ever been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And honesty just clears out that middle ground where all the BS and mess lands. We find out we are all the same, and we find out we are utterly individual. And to me, that's magic. There's magic in that. All we have to do is tell our stories the way we see them. And then as a writer or an actor, to dig into other perspectives, which has been so powerful in my journey as a person, to look at the narrative I've been telling myself from my perspective and to get outside of it a little bit. And I first did this as a writer and as an actor, right? Ben talked about Jack and the Beanstalk, right? Why does the giant's wife keep letting this guy in who steals from her husband? Why does she do that? Right? There's information embedded in the narrative that the giant is not aware. He's not very intelligent, but there's no indication that she isn't. Why is she letting why does the harp, who in essence is owned, she's a thing, call out for help when she's being liberated? She's being removed from her place of and just to sort of dig into that. And when I find that I do the same thing in my life, right, get out of my head into possible narratives for other people, I start to see that people who I'd seen as villains in my life are doing the best they can. And it's been healing for relationships. It's been healing for me to go, my perspective isn't the right one. It is my perspective. And that's been powerful. And that is what we're one of the things we are hoping to bring to this retreat.
Yeah, I love that. That was very well said. And it reminded me of a quote, and I think it was Joseph Campbell who said, "We're the heroes of our own stories, but we're not the heroes of other people's stories." Right? We can be the villains in somebody else's story, and that's their story, not ours, right? It's about creating those boundaries and understanding those boundaries, and understanding that, sometimes we just need to be the villain in somebody else's story for their story, right?
Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes is from Brené Brown, who, and I'm going to misquote her here, says something along the lines of, until we own our stories, we can't write them.
This is the thing.
It's like, this is your story. You are creating it, or it gets created for you. And we actually do get to choose some of that.
Oh, completely. And it's a weird social paradigm. And I think it's really a very embedded cultural trait where we don't get to own our stories, that our stories are what other people tell us it is. And we just have to accept it. And that's really the essence, as you said, this is really the essence of the retreat, and what we'll be doing is providing those multiple routes to owning story. through your work, my work, and even the work of Ryan. So a little bit about the food of the event before we talk a little bit about what the event actually is. Ryan is going to be our chef for the event. And the food that you've been growing at Foxhaven is really part of the story of Foxhaven, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, here, when I first got here, there were no gardens, nothing of that sort. And so throughout the last few years, I've built some raised gardens. Since we're on mostly Canadian Shield, it was necessary to build these gardens. And I had some old wood that just old barn boards and everything that had been sitting, logs that had been on this one part that I cleared off for a parking lot because they were just brought there and left there, and most of them rotted away. So I used some of those. I've also done some just getting all kinds of rocks and everything and built some raised things. So I've planted herbs that come back every year. I've started a small orchard, which I'm so excited about. Of course, they won't be ready this year, but there will be apples and pears and plums. And then right now, actually, on the beaver dam at the end of the lake, there's one huge bush that was of white flowers, and they're elderberries. So I've actually collected them, and right now they are sitting and in some water and making elderflower syrup, which I plan to use on some desserts. I mean, imagine having ice cream with elderflower syrup that's made here, poured over it, and maybe a couple of frozen berries or something that I've collected. Right now, there's all kinds of fire cherries and Saskatoon berries and service berries and blackberries and raspberries, and there right now are actually millions and millions of wild blueberries growing. So I've been collecting those, and we're making jams out of them. And I've been learning all kinds of different recipes that I'm excited to do, homemade curries. And I just actually tried making, and it turned out well, enchiladas, vegetarian stuffed peppers was made just the other night. So it's going to be a mix of food from local sources, some wild foods, and of course, during registration, we'll be sending you people a link to fill out something to let me know if you have allergies, intolerances, or if you're vegetarian or such. So I'll be planning the menu around that. But it's such a fun thing to be able to use things that you've grown and put them and cook them.
Yes.
And then, of course, I have a farmer a ways away that has fresh eggs that I'll be using, because I mean, it's interesting. The eggs that you get in the grocery store and the eggs that you get from a farmer, I mean, the farmer eggs actually taste like eggs. Growing up, I never realized that eggs had an eggy taste. They were an ingredient, not an actual flavor.
I love it.
So
and that really speaks to that kind of local flavor that we're hoping to bring into the food section of art history. I'm really looking forward to that piece. What are we expecting out of this? What can the participants expect? We will be the bulk of the retreat is really, we have multiple streams, and so throughout the event these streams are going to be interweaving into each other and supporting each other with breaks, with the beautiful food that Ryan's going to be creating for us. The stream that I'm developing is all around personal narrative and all around developing an understanding of ourselves as individuals with our stories. Now, the stream that Rob is putting together is all around story. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Rob?
Yeah, it's actually built from a concept of Carl Jung's, that we are drawn. Carl Jung said, and I'm going to get this wrong a little bit. Carl Jung said we are drawn to people who force us to face the parts of ourselves that need to be fixed or developed or matured or healed. I think that is also true of art. We are drawn to the stories that are trying to teach us something. Our subconscious says, this is my favorite story. And there is some truth in that, whatever that story is about. So working from there, working from our favorite fairy tales or ancient stories, a story that's been told and retold for hundreds or thousands of years has truth in it, even if it's not fact. And our modern world has gotten fact and truth very confused in a very unhealthy way. I don't believe that any young man ever threw beans out a window and then climbed up the beanstalk to a giant. But there is truth in that story. There are lessons, there are things we can take from them. So that's what we're looking at in the second stream.
That's beautiful. And then, of course, in the third stream, Rob and I will be collaborating to bring the first two streams together. And so what participants can really expect is full days of inner work, with breaks to go and explore the beautiful grounds of Foxhaven. And then at nighttime, we'll have a time to come together and socialize around the campfire. And the campfire is really that beautiful symbol of coming together as community, to share stories, to tell stories, to kind of just be together. So people coming Wednesday at 1 o'clock, the event starts. We will then go right till Sunday. The accommodations are, can you talk a little bit about the accommodations, Ryan?
Absolutely. There is a communal bunk room which has double bunks, so they're not the small little things. They actually have double mattresses, and so there are 8 of them in that one building. I'm actually creating curtains for the bottom bunks so that there's a little bit of privacy curtain. And it's in a beautiful knotty pine wood building. It has a wood stove in there for if it gets chilly nights and such. And then just actually right off the kitchen, there's a second room that has 4 beds in it. And so there are 12 separate beds that people can have. No one's going to be sharing beds. They are in a shared room, but that's it's kind of like going to camp, and you get to know people a little bit better, and it's nice. And the breakfast, actually, one thing I want to mention is the breakfast is more of a serve yourself, because that way, if you want to get up at 5 a.m. and have something and watch the sunrise or go out on a kayak, you can get something earlier. If you want to wait until 8 o'clock or something to get up, or you just want to grab a quick piece of bread with some homemade jam and a piece of fruit and have that as you're running up the hill to the first session up at the Glitter Palace. It's your choice, however you wish to be. And there will always be some snacks available of fruit and crackers and those kind of things, and homemade hummus or such if you get peckish or need to bring your blood sugar up. So it's very much about community, because you need a community to tell your story to. And so the sleeping accommodations are communal, the food is communal, the eating is, and and there's also at night, if you're really cold, there is a wood-fired sauna if you wish to enjoy that.
So many facilities and amenities. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just want to throw, because it was a question a friend of mine asked. I wouldn't recommend it in late October, but there are camping facilities as well.
Absolutely, there are some campsites and everything.
And truly be away, but it's going to be October.
Yeah,
just putting that out there.
There's also, if you have an RV, there are spots that we situate RVs, trailers. However, they don't have, because we're off grid, we're completely off grid. We have solar power with a backup generator and such. So you absolutely bring your RV, but there's not going to be a hookup for power for the RV or septic facilities for the RV. So but there's that option too, if someone has a camper, a pop-up trailer or whatnot, and wishes to sleep there instead of inside in the bunk rooms or such.
Perfect. So many options for individuals to join us that weekend. Now, the weekend of the week, we do have limited number of spots. This is not a large scale event, so it will be quite intimate. Rob, how can people gain more information, and where can we send them to gain more information?
Yeah, the easiest and simplest way is through our website. And Ben, can you post a link to that?
Yes, all the links will be in down below, both on the YouTube page and on other social media.
Yeah, and I'm monitoring any emails that come in at least daily. That's my guarantee is at least daily. At very worst, if life gets very busy, 48 hours is our guarantee. But I've been getting back within a few hours during the day, because I have a little obsessive compulsive going on. So I am monitoring the website and the emails fairly regularly, guaranteed 48 hours, but in most cases, much faster than that if you have any questions. Or if you know any of us individually, you know, shoot us a question.
Absolutely. The
Perfect.
other thing that you can do if you wish to see more about the facility is you can go on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter at @Foxhaven. So that's OUR as an R, Foxhaven. And I usually post a picture every day or two of just flowers or the grounds or something. So you can see some pictures of what the place looks like.
Perfect. And so I don't think there's anything else we really need to talk about. But if any participants or future participants are interested in gaining more information, they can contact us, and we will be sure to help. I personally, I'm very much looking forward to this, especially after COVID and coming back. COVID restrictions, of course, will be maintained. If we'll certainly have be keeping an eye on that, and sanitation will be happening. But I feel hopefully by October we will be starting to really come out of this pandemic, and we will be ready to breathe and tell our stories. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been an adventure already with you both, and I look forward to welcoming all participants in October.
It'll be wonderful. I can't wait. It's going to be an amazing time.
Looking forward to it for sure.
Thank you so much.